Now, we can talk now to the Tories. The Shadow Paymaster General, Richard Holden, is here with me this morning. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for coming in. First of all, I want your reflections on yesterday's judgment by the Supreme Court. They've ruled that the legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex when it comes to the Equality Act. Do you welcome that judgment?
I do welcome that judgment, and I think it's there's been some really strong female campaigners over the last few years who've lost jobs. They've had real impacts, real attacks because of trying to state that fact. Biological women have always been women. That has been the case in fact until now. Now it is fully the case in law as well. I think it's a really good sign from the Supreme Court, especially with that unanimous decision yesterday. It's something actually that we'd said that we would firm up because of this has been a debate which has emerged over the last few years. We'd said in our manifesto at the last general election that we would have enshrined that in law as well to really make that clear with the Equalities Act. The Supreme Court has determined that from the 2010 Equalities Act now itself. But I think the fact that it's a unanimous judgment is really important, and I now hope that the Equalities and Human Rights Commission moves swiftly to get those definition changes through and that guidance through so that everybody across the country can see exactly now what that means.
Well, yes, because there'll be businesses, there'll be sports clubs, there'll be government bodies as well, trying to work out what this judgment means for them. How much do you think will change?
I hope, actually, quite a substantial amount will change, because I think we've seen far too... actually, back in May last year, the last government actually put forward a call for evidence and wanted to look at how we can change this to stop what we were starting to see, sadly, which was the abuse of single-sex women's spaces. And when I think of whether it's maternity units or, indeed, women's shelters, where it was or women's prisons, where it's quite clear, we were all seeing in our newspapers and on the news that there are abuses of the system happening. I hope that changes and that clarity comes through very quickly from the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, because people really need it, and it will help provide real confidence for the system. But it has to be comprehensive, and it has to really reflect that unanimous Supreme Court ruling.
Where do you think this leaves trans people? The court yesterday was clear that trans people will still have protections from discrimination under the Equality Act. But there are groups representing them that have expressed real concerns. Amnesty International has said that there are potentially concerning consequences for trans people. Do you understand why some are going to feel worried in the wake of this?
Look, I don't want anybody to feel worried. I've obviously dealt with constituency cases myself for people in very difficult circumstances. But what I don't want to be... what we've seen in the last few years is people taking that self-identification to another level. And that has caused real problems and real anxiety for women, particularly up and down the country, particularly women in very vulnerable circumstances. And I think that this change is exactly what is required, and I'm hoping that the guidance which follows it will be robust as well. I think it's important that obviously everybody is protected, but that means protection goes both ways, and we have to ensure that women who fought long and hard for rights in a lot of these areas are not ignored, and I think this Supreme Court ruling is actually a real step in the right direction. We know that in the past, Keir Starmer and the Labour Party had a very different view on this. The Conservatives have been quite clear on this, as we were in our manifesto. I'm glad that the court has come down essentially on the side of what we've been saying and what was in our manifesto. I think that clarity is what is required now, and I hope that that guidance reflects that as well.
There's been a pretty toxic debate around this issue. A lot of people have called it a culture war. Do you think that will end now? Can a line be drawn under it, or are you concerned that this could make things worse?
No, I hope a line can be drawn under it, because it's quite clear where the Supreme Court has gone. We also saw the UK government with Kemi Badenoch, the then Scottish Secretary, and then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, really having to stand up to the Scottish government, who were trying to ram gender self-identification down the throats of the British people just a couple of years ago. And then the UK government stood up to that at that time. We then, as I said, in early last year, put forward these changes that we wanted to see to really protect biological sex in single-sex spaces. I'm glad that the government has now come... that the court has now come forwards with those changes. I don't think it would have done, though, without that huge pressure from women up and down the country who've really fought long and hard for this. And I think it's great to see actually they've got the result which they deserve.
Let's change the subject, talk about the bin strike in Birmingham. It's continuing. The union rejected the offer after talks ended without a deal yesterday. Should Unite workers have accepted the deal, do you think?
Well, look, I mean, this is just symptomatic of a situation where we've got a Labour government, we've got a Labour Secretary of State looking after it in Angela Rayner, we've got a Labour mayor, we've got a Labour council, and they can't even get an agreement with Labour's biggest donor, the Unite the Union. I think it's absolutely absurd that the people of Birmingham have to put up with tens of thousands of tonnes of rubbish on their streets. I think it's a disgrace, and I really think that the Labour Party should get a grip of this. It's quite clear they know all of the parties involved in this. You know why? It's because they attend and get their cheques from them. So I think it's really important now that Labour focus on that and dealing with this issue, because it's hugely important for people there. And people are worried right across the country. They're worried that that's just what might be coming in the direction of their local council.
Well, the government has been absolutely clear that they want this strike to end, and they would say that...
Well, they should speak to their paymasters, then and get it sorted.
They would point to the number of strikes that occurred under the Tories from all areas of industry and public service, doctors, teachers, railway workers under the Tories.
Well, we certainly didn't have this under the last Conservative government.
Issues,
and in fairness, you know, what we saw from the Labour Party, which has caused so many of the big problems we're now facing, so many of these massive tax rises, is they gave huge pay rises to, for example, some of the rail drivers and the train drivers without any calls and any demand for changes to their contracts and conditions. So they're now earning multiple times the average national wage, and those wages are being funded by ordinary taxpayers up and down the country. It's quite clear. If you vote for Labour in these local elections, you get poorer services and higher tax. If you vote Conservative, you'll get lower taxes and better services.
OK, quick bit of electioneering there.
Always.
Finally, while I've got you, Kemi Badenoch, your leader, has ruled out a national-level deal with Reform, but she has talked about being open to the possibility of, on a local level, councillors perhaps doing deals with Reform after the local elections. How do you feel about collaboration with Reform?
Look, I think Kemi is absolutely right. We've got a manifesto out there. We've got councillors in the overwhelming council candidates in the overwhelming majority of wards up and down the country. I'm out there campaigning for them, and as well as some of our superb mayoral candidates as well. I think, you know, after an election, if no party has an overall majority in a local council, then obviously the parties have to get together. But before an election, absolutely, we're out there fighting for every Conservative councillor, every Conservative mayor up and down the country. That's what I'm doing. That's what our Conservative councillors are doing. After the election, that's after the election. But before the election, we've absolutely... if you want to see those lower taxes and better services, you've got to vote Conservative.
OK, Richard Holden, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much.